Hello, this is Mike Van Meter, and welcome to the Recovery is Possible podcast. And I want to thank you for joining me. And you can reach us at our Facebook site, which is also called Recovery is Possible, or our website, which is vanmeterwellnesssolutions.com. And this podcast exists to educate the public about addiction, remove the stigma associated with addiction, and offer help and support to those suffering from addiction. This episode is sponsored by FHE Health, a substance abuse and mental health treatment center specializing in treatment for first responders' needs, including PTSD, anxiety, and substance use. So take the first steps to a better life today by visiting FHEhealth.com. That's FHEhealth.com. And so, folks, today we have a special treat. I have a friend of mine, Rick George, who I met when I went down to Florida to meet with the good folks at FHE Health. And Rick is a retired Palm Beach County person with the Palm Beach County Fire and Rescue Service, and he's got an interesting story that he's going to share with us today about his life and just the blessings that you have in recovery. And it just goes to show that, you know, you get into recovery, you never know where you're going to be led, you never know where you're going to end up. And he's going to give us his introduction, but just some of the things that you should know about him growing up. And again, he's going to talk about sort of his addiction background, but, you know, he started out life in building construction and then got into the fire service after getting into recovery. And that's just a fantastic story, and I want to hear more about that. And then the doors just kept opening up. He got into instructing, and he got into working with PTSD, and got into teaching resiliency around the country. In fact, that's what he's doing right now. So in his retirement, I guess he's close to 4 years retired now, and is just teaching. He's got his own company, which he's going to talk about, and is just helping people all around the country because that's what we do in recovery. So I had the great pleasure of meeting him when I went down to do some training myself with FHE Health, and it's just a great pleasure and an honor to have Rick George on the program today. So Rick, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It was a nice intro.
Oh, well, thank you.
Prior to me getting sober, nobody ever talked to me like that.
Well, tell us a little bit. Tell us some more about your background, and because you have a really interesting story.
Yeah, my story turns out like many people that grow up in South Florida. I live in South Florida. I grew up down here. My parents are Cuban refugees. When Castro took over Cuba, my father was an orthopedic surgeon, and he was automatically brought into the military. And Che Guevara, he did not agree with that. He was losing his freedoms. He saw the writing on the wall, the dictatorship starting to unfold in front of him. And so he fled. Che Guevara was already murdering people left and right. Came to the United States and had to go through everything all over again. Had to take the state board or the boards for the doctor boards. From there, the medical boards. From there, went through his internship and his residency all over again, and to regain the status that he once had. My mother was the same. She was a pharmacist. So I come from a family that has had a lot of struggles, and to my benefit, they're extremely resilient. Our family is like ridiculous resilient. The things that, my parents, my grandparents, my brothers, my cousins, aunties, and uncles have overcome is it's very humbling and very honorable. And so, when I started my life out, it wasn't exactly honorable or humbling. It was actually my family was very close. There was a lot of love. There wasn't any abuse. There was no alcoholism rampant or any of that, but I was that kid, man. Back to the South Florida scene. Once I got old enough, I rebelled against all of the foundation and the morals and principles and values that were instilled in me that my parents did, that my parents tried to instill in me as I was growing up, and ran with a bad crowd. And when I say bad crowd, a lot of people tell you it's a bad crowd. These were not nice people. And as a result, I turned to not such a nice person. The extent of smuggling and dealing, violence, there was, I don't think you can be involved in that scene without including those things, and it corrupts. It will corrupt you to your soul. And that's what it did to me. And I think that's what was necessary for me. I don't think that God ever tests us, but I think that he will utilize certain circumstances to refine you and to give you the opportunity to actually do God's will, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But my sobriety date is November 1987. That is 34 years, God willing, this November, for all you mathematicians out
Congratulations.
there. And thank you. And I am one of those one white chip wonders. That means I only I went to rehab for 6 months, and I went to a three-quarter way house, they called it. And there's more freedom than a halfway house and a three-quarter way house. Not as many house meetings and regulations. And I was there for 2 months. So I was about 8 months total. And from there, I came back home and started going to meetings. And it was probably that foundation that led me to only having one white chip. That and the fear of what I left behind. That was back in the day. You remember the show Cops when it first started with Nick Navarro?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of my friends were on that. Colleagues, I should say. That's a nice word for saying other guys that I used to deal drugs with. And they were getting arrested and busted and a lot of home invasions, just a lot of violence. And I think a healthy dose of fear of that my soul was just corrupted and broken, and that I had gotten new information, and it became a challenge. And so there was a healthy, balance of fear and challenge. So I hid out in meetings for the first year of my sobriety. I went to meetings. I was in another fellowship. I was in Narcotics Anonymous. And the reason is real simple. The girls were prettier. That's why I went. It had nothing to do with sobriety or anything else. It's that I transfer my weaknesses, addictions, whatever you call them, your strongholds, your triggers. I transfer from one to the other. So if it's not drugs or alcohol, it could be violence, it could be fast cars, it could be eating, it could be women, it could be anything. And that was it at the time, women. And I think right around 3 years sobriety. I guess the fact for anybody that's listening is I didn't, in my first year of sobriety, I met a girl after my first year. Got married. Let me back up. In my first year, I had an incredible sponsor when I started. And this man worked these steps. And I said, well, how long do you want me to take? What's the time frame? I didn't know anything about it. They're spiritual principles. And all I knew about spiritual principles like faith, hope, and joy, those were women's names. I didn't understand what faith was. I didn't know what joy was. I didn't know what hope was. And it wasn't until I recognized how hopeless my life was and I had a first solution that I experienced hope, that I was able to measure it and go, oh my God, bro, you've been living dark, man. This is ugly. And that kind of shocked me, but it caught me by surprise, but it really opened my eyes. And so we worked, we went through all 12 steps in probably about 10 months. 11 months. I hear some people, their sponsor keeps them on the first step for the first, extended period of time because they have this opinion that that's the only one that needs to be worked perfectly and whatnot. That's not my experience. My experience was not that. My experience was my sponsor told me, he says, this is new information. And the more new information you have to combat your old information, the better off you're going to be. We want to include options. So the example was, if we're removing something from the center, we talk about this hole in our soul, and we try to fill it with all this crap, right? Drugs, alcohol, women, cars, money, clothing, jobs, people we hang out with, places we hang out at, all of that. When we remove that crap, it leaves that hole there. And if you don't replace it with something else, he told me, he says, you're going to go back to your default, and you're going to fill it with that old stuff again. That's where the relapses happen. So I took his advice. Excuse me, I was smoking a cigar and it was about to go out. So That's one of my few. It's one of my few vestiges that I have, in sobriety. I don't run into burning buildings anymore. I don't drive fast anymore. I smoke cigars. So that first year after that, establishing my sobriety and stuff, I met a girl, got married. That led to 3 children. Which is, I don't recommend that to anybody. It's a very expensive hobby, children.
That's true.
There's a lot of reward involved in it too. I actually learned about love from my children, no place else. I don't know how to explain it. When you see your child being born and you know that you're a part of that, and the way they look at you. I mean, you might experience something like that with a dog, but it's like 100 times that when it's a child, And so I really started to get my view of what love looks like from when I had children. My first 3 years of sobriety was nothing short of disastrous. I married a woman I shouldn't have freaking married, but I hung out with a group of guys in that other fellowship. And I say this because it's important for people to understand that just because you go to meetings and you're abstaining and all that, it doesn't make you a freaking great citizen. Okay, it doesn't make you a model citizen. It doesn't make you honorable. It doesn't mean you're living spiritual principles. My first 3 years, we used to go down to the Fort Lauderdale Strip before they cleaned it up, and we would roll drug dealers. That's how I made my money. We beat drug dealers up. We hurt them and took their money. I was essentially a sober thug. Nothing had changed in my life. I just was no longer getting high or drinking. As a result, I was 35 pounds heavier and just that much more dangerous. So when I was at a convention, a series of events occurred, and my sponsor, something happened that I'm not real proud of. I was at this convention, and I was on the swing. It's a big swing. It's outdoors. It's SeaWorld in Orlando. And on the swing, I had met a girl, and we were on the swing, and we were doing something very inappropriate on the swing. And thinking nobody knew anything, and went back to the hotel later, and these guys that I hung out with, this posse of thugs that I hung out with, were all high-fiving me. I was like the big man, And my sponsor walked up and said, "Hey, Rick, you want to have breakfast tomorrow morning?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to." And I got to tell you, my sponsor, I love this guy. I love this guy like an older brother. Like I looked up to him. I revered what he stood for because of the adversity that he had overcome and his stature. He was very well known in that fellowship. A lot of people knew him. He had a high level of integrity. And I liked being associated with that. And so, of course, my boys are like, they know who he was. Oh, my God, that's your sponsor. I'm like, yeah. Playing a big shot, There's this thing that happens in sobriety when you have a tendency of thinking you got shit figured out. You get right-sized. And most of the time, it follows along the lines of humiliation. So I met my sponsor for breakfast. And he had already eaten. And the waitress came up to give me a menu. He said, "He won't need that." And I was like, "Come on, bro. I just woke up. At least a cup of coffee." He goes, "No, this won't take long." And he pushed a handful of bills, money, towards me. He said, "Why don't you go get loaded?" I'm thinking, man, it's kind of early to be joking around like that. I want to push the money back. Like, come on, what do you want to talk about? And he slams his hand down on the table. He tells me, "Why don't you go get loaded?" He says, "I'm not kidding." He said, "What are you doing here?" He said, do you think people didn't know what you were doing last night? Here we are at this 5-star hotel that they're allowing a bunch of recovering addicts and alcoholics to come to celebrate their sobriety. And you do that? This is your example? This is what you're going to do? You're our emissary of what it's like to be sober? He said, "Listen, go get high. So I don't have time for this shit." And I'm like, "What? One little mistake?" He said, "One little mistake? You think kid. He goes, I know what you're doing in Fort Lauderdale. He says, people in the Tri-County area know what you're doing down there, and they know who you're doing it with. He says, not long before you go to prison. He says, you need to get the F out of here because you're spreading your disease, and there's enough of that killing people out there. We don't need it in these rooms. I mean, he broke me down. That's called getting right-sized. Ricky kick. And I was in tears because, I had a safety with him because I knew he knew what he was doing, and I would never have to go back to that lifestyle that I was already creating in sobriety again. Remember that hole in the soul?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't doing the deal. I wasn't doing the work. I just replaced it with all the old stuff. And he called me out on it. And I begged him, I'll do anything you want me to do. And he said, well, I think what would be best for you is if you went to the other fellowship. He's talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm like, consider it done. He said, I'm not kidding. He said, you go to the other fellowship, I want you to hang out with men that you want to grow up to be like, moral men, righteous men, and men that have a God in their life. I was struggling with God tremendously at the time. And I'm a recovering Catholic for anybody else that's a Catholic out there. And so I did. He gave me a series of suggestions, and I followed him because I was scared. I didn't want to go back to what I left. I'm not, listen, my pride got put in check real fast, and I got brought right back to the seriousness of why I was sober. Now, this is before I had any career as a fireman. So I had been working in building construction my whole life. And, I was working for a developer contractor, and we would work residential, commercial, and high-rise. And I worked from a laborer up to a project manager for this man. And prior to getting sober, I was a project manager on a job, and I cost him my year's salary in one morning because I was partying with a couple of girls that weekend. I didn't feel like showing up at the job, and I didn't unlock it. And there was concrete, steel, and just all kinds of laborers working, skilled labor waiting to get into work. And nobody could get there before noon. I was supposed to be there at 6. And I never bothered calling them or anything. I got fired. So when I got sober, I went back, and I apologized, and I explained to him what I did. I made amends, which is what our steps call for. Mm-hmm. He offered me a job again, and I finished with him. The ironic part is I just took my wife to a doctor's appointment at the last building that I built for this man. It was kind of cool walking in there and tripping through that. So in sobriety, I am thinking about what do I want to do with my life, right? I'm working for a medical supply company. I've done a lot of different jobs, but I couldn't find my niche. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I enjoyed helping people, but I didn't know, my kids tell me they don't know now, and I can be very patient with them because I was 30 years old at the time. I got sober at 29. I was 30 by the time, and I'm struggling. I'm like, man, what am I going to do? I know I'm not going to do this building construction for the rest of my life. Not going to happen. And so I worked for this medical supply company, and I drove a big panel truck, and I delivered hospital beds and room air concentrators, oxygen. Sometimes I'd run medication to certain facilities and homes. The portable commodes, the shower stall seats, all kinds of equipment like that, crutches and canes and walkers, and stuff like that. And I was impressed with the clientele. Excuse me. I couldn't stop bragging on these people. It's like, man, these people are so cool. I go in, and it's like they have this vision. It's so sharp about what's important in life. There's no bullshit, it's like they just boom, and like this clarity of how important it is to develop family and how important it is to treat yourself right and to treat others right and not to focus on the silliness of being vindictive or getting revenge, and because nothing comes of that. It spoils your heart, and in the end, it's wasted time. I mean, these conversations I'd have with these people, it just blew me away. It was like going to a meeting. Well, let me tell you how sharp this tack was. Okay, so I go back to the warehouse and I'm picking up equipment, I'm bringing it back, and I'm going, man, this got to be one of the most rewarding jobs, you know. Warehouse manager kind of cocks his head. He goes, "Are you joking?" I looked at him. I said, "No, serious." He goes, "Well, what makes you say that?" I said, "Well, I get to bring this stuff out there and meet these people and develop these relationships, and they get better, and I get to bring this stuff back. It just gives me hope." He said, "Bro, let me tell you something." He says, "We deliver stuff for hospice patients. They're not getting better. They're dying." I was like, it shut my mouth, and I walked through that warehouse kind of numb. I just didn't see that coming, you know? And so I worked there for a while longer, and until I got to watching television one day, and I saw this advertisement. There were some firemen and paramedics and stuff on there, and the switch is thrown. It's like God removed the scales from my eyes, and I'm like, holy crap, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. Now, as a child, my mother would keep this little book. Remember now, she's a Latin woman, right? This woman would keep locks of hair, report cards, and my aspirations since I was able to talk, right? And you can see where it dropped off when I started becoming a problem. It was like 7th, 8th grade, you know? And so up till then, it was always fireman, doctor, fireman, doctor, fireman, doctor. I don't know where that came from. I didn't even realize that until she gave me that book years later. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. And it's like that switch was thrown when I saw the commercial. And I was like, all right, I'm going to cut my hair. So for people that don't know me, my head is as bald as a baby's behind. Okay, but
I've met you. It is
time,
bald.
Yes,
it looks good though. It looks good that way. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
At the time, my hair was about down to the middle of my back, my lower back, and I cut my hair, and the reason I cut my hair is because I knew I could pass the entrance exam, which was the drug screening and the urinalysis test. That was the test I was worried about failing. Everything else I knew I could pass, and I did. And I was on my road to the doors just opened. I got a part-time job near home so I could study while I was in paramedic school, and so I got my paramedic certification and my fire certification, and I went out looking for jobs, and I applied with Palm Beach County 3 or 4 times, and I couldn't seem to crack that nut. I kept at it, and eventually got on a list. It was, at the time, there wasn't that many. There was maybe 750, 800 people. Now it's thousands, vying for a job. So I happened to have been either the last or second to the last of the 24 people picked for this academy. And I was the last person picked because the one person picked bailed out and they pushed me up the ladder. And so I got in, and I went through this academy, and I got this great job, and I was living a dream. I just loved it, and from there I went, there was a lot that we went through on the job. I got stuck on we call them a rescue. It's the ambulance, that big truck. It's like a ginormous ambulance. We got fire equipment on there and medical equipment, so it's a dual purpose. And I was stuck on there. I ran rescue for about 15 years, and I would say 3 of it was before I went to Palm Beach County, and then another 12 was at Palm Beach County. And that's no joke, man. I live in South Florida. Well, we got this sense of humor in the fire service, kind of dark and abrasive,
Mm-hmm.
So we call South Florida St. Pete's waiting room, because everybody that retires comes down here to retire. It's a nice place to retire. And so it just means people come down here to die, and that's the way we looked at it, and we ran a lot of that, just sick and dying. And it's a relatively mentally abusive position, because you are not sleeping. Over a period of time, that lack of sleep turns into a very abrasive personality, a very irrational thinking person. And I have long periods of being irrational and angry, interrupted by very short periods of being happy, joyous, and free. And then right around that time, I go back to work. And eventually those periods of happy, joyous, and free got shorter and shorter. I got promoted up the ranks, and that kind of changed things for me. Then a divorce came, and the divorce was a catalyst for me being diagnosed with PTSD. So there's a lot going on there, and I'll delve into it a little bit, because I think it's important for people to recognize the importance of a family unit. When that gets fractured, that's your foundation. The person that you're in love with, that you're going to grow old and die with, the person that you're most intimate with, that you share children with, you've created life with this person. You've created a life, and you've created life with this person. And now when you come to this place where you realize everything you thought it was is not, it wrecks your world, especially when your kids are being withheld from you. And it doesn't matter whether it's legal or not. The family system is flawed. I could speak from experience. The judge looks at me. I'm 5'10". At the time, I weighed about 228, 230 pounds. I was about 5-6% body fat. And he looks at this little blonde, and right away, I'm the jerk, and she's the angel. And everything went her way for about 9 months, and then things changed. So the point is that I don't care how strong you are mentally. There's an emotional and a spiritual aspect to the attack that you may or have already come under. And if we don't know how to prepare to fight that battle, because conventional weaponry is useless in it, you will succumb to it, become a statistic that we have in our disciplines. For every line of duty death, there are 3 suicides. Mm-hmm. And that holds true for the military, law enforcement. I don't care what initial it is, whether it's FBI, CIA, the Treasury, fire service, EMS. The statistic is the same all the way across.
Yeah, it is.
And so how ironic is that? The sirens go off in the background right then. And so I got diagnosed with PTSD. And not a moment too soon, because there were 2 times that I acquainted myself with the taste of gun oil, and one was before I got sober. That's how desperate I was. And the other time was during this period of a divorce, because the anxiety had gotten so bad. I had developed this anxiety and this irrational thinking, so I couldn't sleep past 3:30 in the morning, and I'd be awake. And I'm like, what is wrong with you, bro? There's something wrong. You hear the self-talk. Something's wrong with you. You're not normal. And, you tell yourself something consistently enough and long enough, your name may as well be Nostradamus, because it's going to come true. And the emotional swings, I could go from, joy and adulation to, just tremendous sadness. Just the melancholy was so deep, and the fits of crying and then laughing, and the anxiety. I couldn't even put a sheet over my face without getting claustrophobic. I couldn't lay on my stomach without getting claustrophobic. So keeping a mask on my face has become a challenge at work now, and it's very emasculating, because back in the day, I was the man. I was the guy. If it was ugly, I wanted to go. If it was tight, if it was hard, dirty work, I'm your guy, and I prided myself on that. And I love to rise to the challenge. I love to work with a team and share that kind of thing with them, and just, like-minded, just give it everything we got. I had that dumb image of you go, I go, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world, because it's not just if you go, I go. What about your wife? What about your kids? What about my family? What about our loved ones? What about our friends? That's so reckless. It's such a reckless, attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I get the whole Hollywood thing, but you know what? It's bullshit. It's bullshit, So I get diagnosed quite by accident. That was the second time I familiarized myself with the taste of gun oil. And I had a moment of clarity. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. Who's going to raise these kids? Because I met my ex in a meeting, and she was no longer sober. She had relapsed long before the divorce, which there was a series of events that occurred prior to that. My daughter was assaulted, and my wife had accumulated the traumas of her life, never really dealt with them. And so when that happened, that was the trigger. That just shattered her world. And the cheese slid right off her cracker, and she ain't never been the same since. And to this day, she I pray for her every day, but
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that.
Well, that's okay. I got a wonderful woman in my life now that just, man, I got a serious upgrade. Incredible. My kids call her mom. It's amazing. Between the both of us, we share 6 children. So I got diagnosed with PTSD quite by accident by my kid's psychologist. I went through this thing that they call exposure therapy, and it absolutely sucked for about 8 months, but it was probably the best thing I could have ever done. And during that period of time, I was asked to come and work at a buddy of mine's rehab. A friend of mine had opened up a rehab. South Florida is like the mecca for rehabs. I don't get that. Yeah. I don't know what that's. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a freaking halfway house or a recovery center or a rehab or something around here.
Well, because it's sunny down there. I'm up in the Northeast. It gets cold up here. You don't want to be in treatment in January up here. I want to go to Florida.
Yeah, I can imagine it doesn't help the depressive state much.
The sun doesn't come out.
No. So I would go to speak at his rehab, and he's like, "Man, you got this great story. I think people need to hear it." And I'm like, "All right, yeah." And it just wasn't clicking for me, and he was paying me really good, and I felt so guilty. At this time, I had gone back to church, and I was taking my paycheck, and probably 3/4 of it, I was giving it to the church that I still go to. I know that sounds crazy, but I was already making money. I didn't really need it, and it was just such an extremely generous amount. I was like, this is terrible. I can't do this. And I quit. After 3 months, I quit. I told myself, I can't do this, bro. It doesn't feel right, From a guy that would roll drug dealers in the street and take their money to a guy that is doing a job and working and saying, yeah, this doesn't feel right. It's not moral. I don't know what happened. Okay. That's just that's the touch of the master is what that is. So, he diagnoses me with PTSD. I'm doing this thing there. I'm going to meetings. I'm working on how to overcome these anxieties. I get turned on to this guy. He's a military psychologist, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman.
Oh, and, yeah. I've met Dave Grossman. Yep. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good guy.
Great guy. So I read his book. I'll give you a quick story on that. I read his book, and his breathing got me. I was like, I got hope again. And I recognized it this time. I was like, okay, this is familiar. I've been here before in my life. When I got sober, and then I got the hope on the second step and all that. And I was like, okay, I know where I'm at. This is familiar. I'm on the right track. And so I continued to stalk this man until I found out what his home phone number was, and I called him. I ended up speaking to I think it was his accountant. And he wanted to know how I got the number, because they thought they'd scrubbed, the web with all of his contact info. And I'm thinking, I hold all the cards, right? Yeah, no. How about his cell phone and I'll give you the website? Like, I don't have any wiggle room in this. It was just, but I was desperate. I needed to talk to him because I know he held a key. And so I gave him, I think it was OptiSense is the website it was on. And I gave it to him, and he's given me his email address because at the time, Dave didn't give his cell phone out. It was just for family. So you contacted him by email, and he would reply quickly, he told me. So as he's giving me the email address, I'm typing it into an email. He replied, I swear to God, I no longer hit the sent, and I had a return email. Is this my sheepdog in South Florida, my fireman sheepdog? And I started laughing. I was like, this is incredible. I said, he just emailed me back. He said, I told you. He said, hey, Rick, thanks very much. He said, lose this number. I said, done. And so developed I've never met the man, but I have a relationship with him. Mm-hmm. And my partner in Canada, I developed a company called Tactical Resiliency Training. And my partner in Canada was going to his wife is, she's on the police force up in Peterborough. And she's also on the Olympic team. So she's this high performing woman, and Dave's like, yeah, Grossman's coming up. My wife had tickets. She could have got tickets. She doesn't want to go to listen to some guy talk about, whatever. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's Dave Grossman. And so I reached out to Dave. I said, hey, my partner's in Peterborough where you're doing this class. He really wants to go and see you. He said, no problem. He said, send an email, call this number. And I called them. They said, tell him to come up. It'll be at will call the ticket. So Dave hooked him up. And my partner, Dave, goes to see him, introduces himself, talks with him. I'm like jealous, right? And then he's telling me about a month later, he's going, hey, man, he goes, you're not going to believe this. I just took this large animal hunt class, and it was just 3 of us. It was incredible. I said, really? He goes, yeah, it was this guy and his son and me. And I go, that's awesome, bro. He goes, you know what's even more awesome? I go, what? He goes, it was Lieutenant Colonel Grossman and his son in the class with me. I was like, you suck, bro. I can't believe this, So, Grossman was one of the people that helped me piece my life together by learning techniques to be able to control my arousal levels being my thought processing, my emotional swings, my physical acceleration, the homeostasis that occurs, which is rapid heart rate, high blood pressure, rapid respiratory rate. And so it was on, and I started teaching that stuff. And at the time I was an instructor. I was teaching all over the country. I still am in performance, but this took me in a different direction in performance because I was able to put my life back together and finish the last 10 years of my career strong. And, as compared to where I was at the time. And, you get older, you ain't never going to perform the way you used to. It just doesn't work like that. And so during this whole process, I had been struggling with God. And this is the piece that I wanted to get to because it is the most important piece. And I know this is running long, and I apologize. I didn't believe in God. I grew up as a Catholic, and I got beat up a lot by the nuns and the priests. And I don't mean like, they would try to take my lunch money. I mean, it was, don't ask questions, just do what we tell you to do. And I wasn't getting any answers. And it was, I was like, that's not my God. I don't want a God like that. And so I was left kind of lost and drifting. And when, during my divorce, I went to the Bible and started reading it, and I couldn't put it down. I kind of read like a spiritual adventure, I was like, this is amazing. This is so cool. But I didn't really know, I didn't have much referencing and a baseline on it. So I'm just reading it for the first time, and it really left an impression on me. That led me to going to a church, which is a Calvary Chapel near here. And the pastor was one of us. And he talked about his life that he used to have and how difficult it was, but how much easier it is for him now because he's got this relationship with God. And they kept talking about this relationship. And I'm like, holy crap, that's what the 11th step is. Through prayer and meditation, to improve my conscious contact with God, and my ability to recognize his will for me and the power to carry that out. Thinking, oh, okay, I see what you did there, as I point up to the sky. And so I went on this path. I was at station 33 at the time, and I'm in church, and my current wife, the pastor's talking about a men's ministry. It's a Bible study, men's Bible study, and talking about how it's important for men to be able to lead their families. And if you can't lead your families and raise your children properly, how you expect it to be a pillar of the community? How you expect it to lead people that are lost? How you expect it to recognize those that are lost? How can you console them? How can you direct them in the proper direction? How do you increase, the value of your life? How do you have a value on other people's life? I mean, he's hitting us with all this leadership stuff. I'm like, oh man, he got my attention. I like this. He goes, and it's called 33. That was the name of the class, 33. My wife leans over, she goes, ever get the feeling that God's talking right to you? I started laughing because it felt like he hit me right between the eyes with a 2x4. And that started it, man. I started going to this class. There was actually a former FBI agent in that class, another fireman. There was a cop. There was a guy that was, he was released from prison. He had a life sentence, was released from prison in there. I mean, it was a eclectic group. It spread across the board. And it was the greatest group of knuckleheads. Man, I mean, God has put me in with some really good people. And I started to develop this relationship. And I tell this story because I'm 34 years sober, but it wasn't until I was around 20 years sober that it all really started to kick in. That whole time, I was on a journey seeking. And I know that in hindsight. So for anybody that's struggling with it, that's fine. The struggle is part of it. It's the refinement process. Because what he had in store for me working with other men and women that have PTSD in the industry that you were talking about, I do a couple of groups at FHE Health in a program called Shatterproof. And I work with uniformed personnel. And I'm able to help them, and I can speak with authority and integrity because I've experienced those things. And then the cancer came. I was not shocked because it was not, am I going to get cancer? I am going to get cancer. It's just a matter of when and what kind. And it was colon cancer. And fortunately, because I had regular checkups, they caught it very early. It was a surgical cure. But I knew right away where I was. I had been here before, and I did not feel hopeless. I had this relationship with God, and I trusted it. And it turns out a very dear friend of mine across the state, right across the road called Alligator Alley, takes you from the East Coast to the West Coast. And my buddy Mark Weiss had developed pancreatic cancer. And I was able to be there for him because I could also understand what it was like to have that diagnosis and to have your own mortality questioned and to make these arrangements and all the things that you'd left undone to try to do them. And all this other stuff, and so I was with him till he died, and it was and I've been with other men that have had cancer as a result, but it was a lot easier because that process had happened so many times throughout my life. That refinement. You know why I was such a good fireman and why I was such a good instructor? Because of the construction that I was involved in prior to me getting hired. The reason I worked in the hood and was able to relate to people and get along with them is because I was one of those hood rats before I got sober. He has used every aspect of my life for his glory. It just blows my mind. You can't make this stuff up, man. And then he breaks me again. And well, he doesn't break me, but he allows me to get broken again with the PTSD. And I end up developing this course and I teach these classes around the country on performance and mental health. And one thing has led to the other. All of it has got God's fingerprints all over it. He gets all the glory. I'm just a mouthpiece, man. I got a high school education. I read neuroscience papers, research and stuff, and I'm like a geek. I can't get enough of this stuff, and I understand a lot of it. I sit on boards and I just look around and go, these people all have to be wondering, why in the hell is this guy here? And I have no answers, and I don't care, because it doesn't matter, because I serve one master. I don't serve multiple masters. I serve one master. And, he has opened up doors for me and blessed me in ways that I don't deserve. Mike, when I got sober, I didn't get justice. I got mercy. And that was all in his hands,
Yeah.
So the whole, if you're going to walk away with anything from this, we talked about the physical and the mental side. There's a lot of people that can help you with that. But what about your emotional? How do you emotionally regulate? And how do you feed your soul? Because if you're just empty inside, it doesn't matter what you learn, you're still empty inside. And you have to feed your soul. And so that was a big, big piece for me. And I'm going to end it there, because I know this is running long. And that's a good spot to end right there.
Well, if you don't mind, let me ask you a couple of follow-up questions. Do you have a couple of minutes left?
Of course I do. I got plenty of time.
Well, let me just say one more time. Okay, this episode is sponsored by FHE Health, and we've been talking about FHE Health here. Great program. We both work down there and work with those great folks, and they've been providing life-changing behavioral health services for more than 20 years, and they treat substance abuse and mental health disorders in an individualized and comprehensive approach, recognizing the specialized treatment needs of the first responder community. They've created Shatterproof, a dedicated program for law enforcement, fire rescue, and similar communities to receive treatment among peers. They're experienced in providing privacy and working with unions for employment. FHE Health is committed to providing the best care experience for our patients, for the families, and for our community. So learn more at fhehealth.com. So with that, Rick, I will tell you, and maybe you've run into something similar, and I see this enough at 12-step meetings that I'm sure you have. I've developed a tremendous faith in my own life and my own recovery, and you have as well. You talked about that very, very eloquently here in this podcast. I run into so many people that come into treatment, and I'm currently working at a treatment center in Maryland, and I just, the hostility towards anything spiritual, anything religious, I'm sure you've run into that. And the thing is, with 12-step meetings, that people are like, well, what else do you got? Because I know you're going to try to sell me on God. And I struggle with that, because I did not come into this, to be honest with you, I didn't come into sobriety over religious. I was probably more, if you would have asked me, I would have told you I was a religious person, but I didn't really understand what spirituality was, to be honest with you, until after I got into recovery. But people, it's not even like they're not interested. They're almost hostile towards it. But if you get any length of sobriety, and just about everybody I know that gets any length of sobriety talks about how the spiritual part of their life is really what brought them to that point. So how do you, Rick, what do you say to that, or to say to somebody that's new, somebody that's listening right now? How would you address that?
I did a lecture on performance in front of about 750 firemen in Portland, Oregon, and I started talking about God, and I started seeing twitch in their seats, like suddenly
makes them uncomfortable, doesn't it? Yeah. And I stopped and I looked at them. I said, some of y'all a little uncomfortable when I start talking about God. I said, well, listen. It's just part of my story, and it's my story, and it's directly relevant to what we're doing up here on performance. I said, now please, don't let that interfere with your ability to come up to me afterwards and talk to me about performance, okay? Just because I talk about God. It's not like it's an STD. You ain't gonna get it just because I'm talking about it, okay? It's not infectious.
And I just let people know that, you know what, I get it, man. I get it. And I would encourage you to continue doing what you're doing. Because you got to find your way. Everybody's got to find their way. I mean, here I am 20 some years in sobriety, still struggling with that. And I've ended up developing this relationship that I've been missing all along. But God had to refine me to get me to that point. Now I can recognize it. I don't expect others to recognize it. I tell them, I said, listen, if you're going to live a spiritual principle, if you're going to live a spiritual life, because they're like, oh, no. They got this cute saying, religion is for people that are scared to go to hell, and spirituality is for people that have been there. And I just look at them like, what's a spiritual program? What is spirituality? And you can hear a pin drop. And what I'm going to tell everybody out there, if you want to live a spiritual life and you're having a substance abuse issue, when you go to Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or any of the, AA, NA, OA, GA, and maybe even AAA, okay, that they all have these 12 steps. And those 12 steps have principles behind them. Honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, forgiveness, love, peace, service. They have all these spiritual principles. That is living a spiritual life. Spirituality is an intangible that affects you. It is a virtue. And virtues is what creates character. And leaders have strong moral character. Otherwise, you're just a manager. There's no getting around it.
Yeah.
There's no getting around it. The foundation of leadership is character. If you're going to lead your family, you have to have strong character, moral character. That's what's right. The what is right part is important, because you could be with a band of pirates and their principles are completely different than a group of Buddhist monks. The principles depending on who you're with. But to live a spiritual life, the journey to find God is different for everybody, and not everybody gets it or has to. Whatever, I don't know. I know when I talk to people, Rick, and this is maybe kind of a different sort of interesting take on this as well, is when I hear people say to me that they don't want to, because the other thing that you hear about 12-step programs is it's a cult. I've heard that before. I'm sure you have as well. I tell them, hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, but
so is the fire service.
The only thing is that the other cults, you go drink something and you all die. And in our
That's
cult,
right.
they teach us not to drink the Kool-Aid, because I was drinking the Kool-Aid and it was killing me. But, here's an interesting thing is when I tell people when they say that they don't want to worship anything or anyone, what I tell them is you were already doing that. I mean, I don't know
That's
about
correct.
you, but in my case,
Right.
with alcohol, I was worshiping the bottle. And let's be honest, it was worshiping the bottle. My wife used to say, I'm not your wife. The bottle is your wife. It told me what to do. It told me when to get up in the morning. It told me whether I was traveling, whether I wasn't traveling, whether I was going to get promoted or not promoted. Am I going to go to that meeting? When did I take an airplane? What time did I take an airplane? Where was I taking an airplane? It drove my life. And what's interesting is we actually think about this. We refer to alcohol as spirits. You've seen these stores, right? And the sign says wine and spirits. Well, what's a spirit? A spirit is an entity, right? And it's a being. A spirit is not an inanimate object. And I've always found that kind of interesting because, and how many times have you been to a 12-step meeting where people have said, hey, giving up alcohol or drugs was like going through a divorce? Well, you divorce a person, you don't divorce a thing. So what I say to people is, you were already in that cult worship before, and you didn't have any problem with that. But now we say, come over here and we can teach you the way and the light and the hope. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can't do that. That seems cultish. I've always found that amusing. What do you think about that?
I think that people don't realize how strong their cognitive biases are.
Yeah.
I think they underestimate how strong their biases are. When you have lived a particular way for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 and up years, now suddenly you got to change it. It's scary. They have lived that way so long, they don't recognize the fear behind that. And that's what it is. It's fear. Well, what are you scared of? Because you're already killing yourself. You've already compromised your family. You're compromising your job. You've compromised yourself. But the fear doesn't allow them to see that. Plus, our society has normalized this shit.
Yeah. They do not help. Our government and our society does not help this cause.
No.
It does not at all.
No, they've got to look at what they're doing with Suboxone. And prior to Suboxone, it was methadone. I mean, look, let's look at it from a different perspective. Say you're a sex addict, okay? And you're a married man, and you're going to go, you go find hookers and you stray every once in a while. Okay. And then your wife catches you and you're like, okay, I won't do that anymore. I won't have sex with them anymore. And so you stop having intercourse, but you have oral sex instead. But there's no difference. I don't care what freaking Bill Clinton says, okay? There is no difference. Sex outside of your marriage is sex outside of your marriage. You are compromising yourself. And in the process, you're compromising your relationship, And in the process, you're hurting others. So, the drinking only hurts me. Oh, is that right? Is that right? Well, I beg to differ with that because I've seen the end results of what happens. What is today? Today's Saturday. I think it was Wednesday morning. I got news that a guy that graduated from our program 6 months ago. He was from the Colorado area, and he's a fireman, and well-liked guy. I'm sorry, Indianapolis. Well-liked guy, and he went home. He was struggling with a relationship. He was cheating on his wife for 3 years, and he had relapsed and was drinking for 3 years. So he developed this relationship while he was under the influence of his new God, okay? And in rehab, he realized what he had done wrong, and he was trying to reconcile with her. But then the urges became strong again when he left, and he opened the door again with the woman that he was involved with for 3 years. And the wife and her have, I probably shouldn't tell the story, but I'm going to because it's important. And it's only been 6 months. And there's a confrontation. So the guy goes out to his truck, grabs his weapon, comes back into the house, and blows his brains out right in front of both of them. This is where we end up. It's a one-way road. Evil is evil. I don't care. And you work in our line of work, you see it. You see it. If you believe in evil, there has to be good. Just walk away with that one right there and try to catch yourself. This is a very insidious disease, it works in the mind, and it leaves you in what they call spiritual maladies in our literature. And so, listen, Alcoholics Anonymous has done what doctors could not do for the alcoholic. And here we are, years later. There's not so many people in the Bowery and this and that. They have an option. So it's what they raise the bottom. So people actually can get sober and manage their lives again and have long-term, incredible lives. So they can't be wrong. Maybe it's that cognitive bias. People just aren't aware of it, and it's, you see it in the movies. They glamorize it. It's not a glamorous lifestyle. It's not. And if you're questioning it right now and you're listening to the show and you're even wondering for a second, I got news for you. You got a problem. Yeah. You got a problem. You should fix it. You should fix it. Always face your problems. Never turn your back on your problem. Never turn your back on your enemy. Always face it, and it's a winnable fight. It's a winnable fight, but the way that our people are killing themselves, bro, this is terrible. And if we were just taught the things that we're talking about, it goes a little more in depth, ladies and gentlemen, but Alcoholics Anonymous opens a door for a lot of growth.
It does.
And a lot of people. It alters lives. And maybe you don't have an alcohol problem. Maybe you have a mental health problem. So if you take a drunken horse thief and you sober him up, you still got a horse thief, right? You take a drunken idiot, sober him up, you still got an idiot. Everything that occurs is that 6 inches of real estate between your ears. It needs, I remember calling my dad and telling him, man, you got to get me out of this treatment center. They're trying to brainwash me. My dad, he says, son, you don't need a brainwashing. You need a pressure cleaning. You need a thorough scrubbing,
That's right. And I tell you something else too, that if I've been brainwashed in this program, well, my life has gotten about 1,000% better in the last 9.5 years. And so maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe we need a little brainwashing.
That's right. That's right. I stumbled into everything I have done, which is just further proof that even a blind mouse finds cheese sometimes. I have been led and I've come to this understanding, and it's a deeper level of understanding. Now, if somebody were to ask me, oh, your life is trouble-free. Oh, no, son. Oh, no. Hardly. I'll get off this phone. I could have a drink, get off this phone. This is a program of vigilance. You have to be vigilant. This is a spiritual battle, man. This is a battle. I said it earlier. Conventional weaponry will not help you in this battle. You better arm yourself appropriately. And if you think you got it so figured out, I'm not quite sure why you're listening to this.
Yeah, that is so well said. That is so well said. And, Rick, I've enjoyed this conversation. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, just one last takeaway. Just give us one bit of advice to anybody that's listening and struggling right now.
Oh, man, you are not alone. Oh, I know what it's telling you in your head. You suck. Don't tell anybody. I know. I was prepared to become a statistic rather than let anybody know. And I was sober. It's when I had my PTSD. And so it's the mental rewiring of the brain. Look, you are not alone. And quite frankly, you're normal. You just don't have the tools to combat what you're up against. You're frustrated. You're at a dead end. Don't feel defeated. This is the end of that chapter and the beginning of a new one. Give yourself a chance. I mean, what do you got to lose? What do you have to lose? I'm not going to give up my dignity. Man, you gave that up a long time ago.
Yeah. Definitely.
Learn how to get it back. Something or someone or some circumstance has dulled your shine. You have an opportunity to get that shine back, to put that hope back in your life. You're not alone. This is how it starts. The beginning, the end of that life, the beginning of a new one. You just commit yourself, man.
So,
that's
Rick,
a terrible place.
If anybody, if they want to reach out to you or your company, do you have some contact information you could throw out to the listeners?
Sure. I'll give you a bunch of contact info. So you can find our Facebook page is Tactical Resiliency Training. We're in the process of getting a web page put together so that we can get off the social media and just run our own platform. And my email address is Rick, J, R-I-C, by the way, it's spelled R-I-C-J at RICJ954 at protonmail.com. And my phone number is 561-239-1908.
Could you give that phone number one more time?
Of course, 561-239-1908.
Okay. Well, this has been fantastic for the listeners, and I know that this is going to be just valuable information for many people out there that are listening. And thank you so much, Rick, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Mike, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. I love the service that you're doing with this, and the way that you're helping people is amazing. Love it. Love it.
Well, you're helping so many people as well, folks, and reach out to Rick and get as much information as you can. And certainly if you need any training done at your agency or group, church, whoever you have, reach out. And folks, this episode has been sponsored by FHE Health, and according to SAMHSA, first responders are 30% more likely to develop behavioral health conditions like PTSD. FHE Health specializes in getting first responders better and cleared for duty, so find out more at fhehealth.com. So as always, I'd like to say that I don't represent any group. Now, I know we talk about groups that are on here, and we obviously, Rick and I both are members of various members or fellowship groups, not just one, but multiple. And certainly get out and check out one of the 12-step programs that are out there, or any other program that's out there that can help you. Because like Rick talked about, whenever we get new information, it replaces the old information that we have. So please do that. So my only purpose in giving this information is to share with you what I've done, and the same with Rick, because it's helped us, and maybe it will help you too. So if Rick or I have said something that doesn't apply to you, or you don't agree with it, then just discard it. But try to take any information you can use for yourself and help others as well, because that's what we do in recovery. We help ourselves along the way, and we help to impart the knowledge we've gained to others as well. And so with that, please visit our Facebook page, which is Recovery is Possible, and our website, VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com, and let me know how I'm doing, and let me know if there's any topic that you're interested in hearing, because I'd love to hear from you. And we have some great episodes coming up for you in the next few weeks. So take care, and I'll see you next time.